back to agenda item 12, and it's something which often goes under the radar, and I'd like to know if we as a county council have any actions through these reports to bring it above the radar. That is the trafficking of people either for work or for sex, and how that is identified either through this report or perhaps another agency or working with other agencies, because it's something that's more and more coming onto the public agenda, and I think it'd be useful to hear what the County Council does in response to that. Thank you.
Again, because it's early days for me, I'll be quite tentative in my response, but it's my understanding, first of all, that this is an area which has seen, as the report suggests, and continues to grow in prevalence. So it's absolutely right that members should be really interested in it. There is a vulnerability group, as I understand it, that covers adults and children's boards for the county and the city, and it slightly falls under the remit of that group. I think the difficulty is with the issue of human trafficking. It involves vulnerable adults and it involves perpetrators. And as such, it tends to fall a bit within the remit of community safety partnerships and of health and wellbeing boards. It's a public health issue, but it's also a safeguarding issue. And I think one of my tasks on arrival here really is to try and establish how those strategic partnerships join up across the county, because it's incredibly important if we're to tackle both perpetrator and victim ends of this horrendous crime, that all those strategic partnerships are doing the same thing. I'm sure everybody's working to the same endeavour, but it's quite a good thing to bring the key people together and absolutely confirm that, and that's what I'd intend to do.
It's Mike, isn't it? Excellent. Mike from Health Watch, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose it's really just a slight alluding to the previous point from Mrs. Wright around kind of voluntary sector engagement, and kind of I sit on the Adult Safeguarding Board in Leicester City, and hopefully kind of with Fran kind of spanning Leicester and Leicestershire as we do now, it's something that we're very keen to kind of to work together to ensure that there's more of a kind of a public voice, certainly within the Adult Safeguarding Board services. So I suppose there is a point to raise around the inequality about investment from the councils, whereas Leicester City have an engagement officer, whereas Leicestershire don't, and just trying to see how that can kind of, where that inequality kind of comes from.
That strikes me as a clever question. I don't know if Sandy wants to interject there as to why we don't have an engagement officer.
I'm sorry, Chair, I really can't answer that question. I don't know the answer.
Is there anything you wish to comment on that, Fran?
I mean, only to say that, you know, having experts helping you with engagement and working alongside people like Michael who are experts as well, it all adds to that kind of richer picture. And you'll see in the report there was a very small scale survey done with some local residents asking them what made them feel safe, and they were almost united in their answers. And I think, you know, engagement is one of those things that you have to take so many different approaches to and be so thought out in. We're going to be relying quite heavily on Health Watch to assist us with that, but I think you know, a professional advisor is a great, you know, bonus in the system really, and increasingly places seem to have that role.
Councillor Mear.
Page 55.18, and it regards it's regarding the safeguarding adults reviews, and it says here that funding has been reduced for the forthcoming year, and only those case reviews that are ongoing will be funded from current budgets, but future reviews potentially may not be. It says here that partners will fund them proportionately, but are our partners in, you know, in the same boat as us and reducing funding, and will they be able to fund it? And if we get a serious case review coming up in the adults and communities, will it be investigated fully and thoroughly?
think the first thing to do is to assure you that whatever the funding situation is, it will not result in any cases that should be having a statutory review, not having a statutory review. I'm going to be meeting regularly with the statutory partners around the Safeguarding Board, and I mean, this is one of the issues that we can cover as I get to know them better. But I think from what I've seen so far, they have a good working relationship, and they are pragmatic about finding ways to make sure that statutory things are done.
Right, in the absence of any further questions, can I thank Fran for her first appearance, and thank you for coming. We look forward to seeing you in the future, and I'm sure then we'll have once you've got your feet under the table, we'll have a more active dialogue. So feel free to stay, but I know you've got to dash off. Thank you. Right, we'll now take agenda item 8, which is pages 13 to 18, and this is domiciliary care service, post November 2020, and it's with Sandy.
Thank you, Chair. This is really an introductory report to changes which are upcoming in the commissioning of domiciliary care. So it's a relatively short report, but I think you'll note from the report there's an intention to bring back a much more detailed report in November. The current contract for independent sector domiciliary care was started in November 2016 and was for a period of 3 years with 2 possible years of extension. The contract has actually been extended for a year with the existing providers, so will now go up until November 2020. And the service is jointly commissioned with our colleagues, NHS colleagues in the clinical commissioning groups, county clinical commissioning groups. And the plan is to recommission a new jointly commissioned service from November 2020, with the council continuing to act as the lead commissioner. And as part of the target operating model work, which has previously been reported to you, it will now be the intention that most of the enablement within what is in that current service will be transferred into the council's own heart service, so that will be from 2020. So the service that will be commissioned will not include enablement, which will be dealt with separately as an in-house council service. Currently, work is underway developing the new model for the independent sector service, and the bulk of that service will continue to be personal care and long-term support delivered within people's homes. Options are being considered for other specialist elements to the service and how this will fit with heart enablement and with the wider development of home first services with the NHS as part of an integrated offer. But the service design will consider what those specialist elements should be, and that could include specialist dementia care, and it could also include what described as roving night service and waking night services. Just to clarify what those are, so a roving night service would mean effectively an on-call service that people can call if they require help in their home at night. So it would be based somewhere else, but would then be available for people to call. Night waking services, essentially services in your own home where there is a member of staff available during the night within the home. The more detailed service proposals will be put in a draft specification which will come out for consultation, and we propose that draft would come to you in November prior to going out to consultation. So a timetable for the development of the new service is outlined in the report, and along with the key decisions that's outlined in paragraph 28 of the report. And the committee at this stage is being invited to comment on the approach which has been outlined about the development of the new service. So these ideas can be incorporated into the draft proposals which are being developed and will be brought to you in November. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Do I have any questions? Councillor Wright.
Will the November draft that's coming out have details of contingency plans? I know there's a contingency period and everything, but will there be details of what actual contingencies will take place, and bearing in mind that the difficulties we had last time?
Yeah, if I can just kind of sort of clarify what we might mean by contingencies. So we would expect that every service provider we commission from would have its own contingency arrangements, and those relate to how they also would respond to risks. So there might be a risk that there's poor weather, there might be a risk that there's staff sickness, there might be a risk that there are disruption to travel, those kinds of things. So we'd expect that each provider, all our major providers will expect that they will have their own business continuity arrangements outlining how they might deal with potential disruption to the delivery of service. So that would be absolutely part of the specification that we'd put out. I think the risks that you're probably thinking about are risks to do with the kind of approach to implementation. So as we move from one set of service arrangements to new service arrangements, how do we ensure that there is continuity and we don't end up with people's services being disrupted? And absolutely, we would have to do that, and the implementation plans will include what the approach would be to ensuring service continuity and stability during the implementation approach. I wouldn't expect that there would be a huge amount of detail on that in November, because we're going to be implementing this in a phased way. So one of the lessons learned last time is that we really, from the point of view of kind of clarity about who service we're going for, we implemented in a very short period of time. I think we're very unlikely to do that again, and we're much more likely to have a phased implementation over a period of months. Other than the more kind of what the more general approach would be to managing risk, I wouldn't expect a lot of detail of that to be available in November. That will be developed over time, but we are some way off implementation. I mean, we won't actually be implementing